Well, hello, welcome back. And I'm now very fortunate to be joined by a terrific panel of people to continue this conversation about kind of digital arts and culture, sort of where next, what are the opportunities, what are the barriers, and where can new technologies help us to continue to transform how we engage with audiences. So I am joined by we've got one doctor on the panel or more, I don't know, but anyway, Dr. Pritpal from Wolverhampton University, Hayley Pepler, Ian Ravenscroft, and Parminder Dosanjh. So I'm just going to start by asking the panel to perhaps introduce themselves. Can I start with you, Pritpal?
Yes, so I'm Pritpal. I'm Deputy Head in the School of Creative Industries, and I'm Academic Lead for the Screen School that we see today. And yeah, that's my role. Yeah.
Fantastic. Hayley.
Hi, I'm Hayley Pepler. I am currently with Manchester International Festival, but I'm a writer, producer and director, formerly with the RSC, producing their live cinema broadcasts for 10 years, and also former head of broadcast at Coventry City of Culture.
And Ian.
Hi, so I'm Ian Ravenscroft. I'm creative director of Hey Green Raven. It's an independent producer and consultant, and my background is in digital innovation with the BBC and creating VR and immersive experiences with the BFI at the moment.
Parminder.
I'm Parminder Dosanjh, creative director of a Creative People and Places programme here in the Black Country, and my role is to facilitate lots of brilliant collaborations with communities, academics, creatives, lots of partnerships and lots of great work, making lots of great work happen in the region.
Thank you. Well, so first of all, Pritpal, thank you very much for hosting us here today. Fantastic facilities. Obviously, these facilities are not here just for the space to rock up and have a 3-day conference. So can I sort of talk to you too? Because obviously you're responsible for the next generation of creative industries talent coming through. How do you see the role of the university in actually preparing those students for a future career that obviously, whatever you're teaching them today, it's going to look very different, probably not even in 5 years' time, probably in 2 years' time.
Yeah. So I think that's an important question, because one of the things we're always trying to do is make sure we stay current. And that's one of the reasons we're happy to host something like this and keep collaborating with people. We've heard this over the last few days about partnerships and collaboration. So from our angle, we're going through a curriculum development review very, very soon. And part of it is based on some of the equipment here is so new that some of us haven't used it before, and we're learning how to use it. At our launch last year, it was quite interesting how BBC and various others came around and said it's quite ironic that you're training students for the industry, but your equipment you've got is better than what we've got. And I'll take that. I'm really happy with that. But overall, it's a steep learning curve for us, has been, still is. And we're learning how to use everything properly. And then that's applying to our new curriculum review. The point here is that we want to make sure that we're doing something right, something fit for purpose, and also something that we work with local partners and beyond. And we're doing as much of that as possible as well. And if you don't mind me saying, we do have an advisory board that we're very, very happy for people to join. They want to reach out with us. And we want to make sure that the curriculum review, as I've said, is really, really fit for purpose, because these courses are going to come online sometime next year. And we've got to make sure that when the students graduate in 3 years' time, that they are, not this government low value degree, something that's really good and relevant. And if you don't mind me saying, without getting on a soapbox too much, having taught now for close to 20 years and having managed academics also and seen a lot of students come through, it does frustrate me a little bit when I hear about low value degrees, because our students are doing really well for themselves. We've seen a lot of them go through and do really, really well as a consequence of, the shoulders they've rubbed with us. So I think, I see a bright future for them, for the students, and we offer it across the board. And we are still learning as we go, and we want to make sure that we carry on learning, and that what we do, we need this industry barometer. We need a freelancer barometer. We need to know where things are going so that we do it properly.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And Hayley, you've obviously worked in that kind of cross-section bit between kind of creative industries, broadcast, and the cultural sector. And I know we've worked together on the digital skills bootcamp that you talked about in the skills piece yesterday. What do you think the most kind of significant challenges are, I see there's a microphone needing to be attended to. The significant challenges are for that kind of next generation of people wanting to come in either through the cultural sector but interested in digital, or on the creative industry side wanting to work within culture. What do you think the sector needs to do to kind of support that kind of skills ecology and career development?
I think it's going to largely lean into some of what Ian was talking about, which I wholeheartedly agree with. It's about connection. It's about making connection with people at different stages of their career, but also about connecting to organisations that have ambitions in different areas, and where those ambitions align, and understanding your value. So what is the value that you can add to that organisation? What is your specialism versus what is another organisation's specialism? How do we come together, create a critical mass? That means that we are able to win tenders and that we are able to win work for the region, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And I think that I actually don't think there's a shortage of emerging talent in the West Midlands. Where there is a shortage is more established talent, because they've all left, because the market went. So we've got a challenge at a sort of higher level at the moment, which means that we don't have a set of producers that can win big work for the region. There's a handful of those still working at the moment. And so while we've got that kind of climate, it means that we're stagnated at the top, actually. And so we either wait until this emerging talent, grows and is able to develop, or there's a couple of big hitters that punch through, or we try and attract back some of the talent that might have left. I don't really have an answer for it, but I know that somewhere in the middle of that, there's an extraordinary amount of really interesting stories that in the West Midlands we can tell in a way that lots of other areas can't tell. And that's connected to where we are in the country. It's connected to our heritage, our industrial heritage, and also the diverse nature of our population as well, and our geography. So I think there's a few challenges in there, but I don't think that we have a shortage of emerging talent. And I also think that we've got quite a healthy picture of resource, actually, and facility such as this. What we need is to be able to connect that next level, to bring in work here, to make spaces like this really active.
Absolutely. And Ian, I'm just talking to where we were talking with Corey before, because it does feel to me that some of where that stagnation or that kind of that lid occurs is because, and this isn't just the West Midlands, I think this is true across the UK nations and regions, that there is an expectation that digital in some way equates to broadcast, and broadcast has very narrow portals for a variety of reasons. Not, there are a limit to what can go into those schedules. So for me, there's a big parallel piece here that we were talking about, which is distribution, publishing. You don't actually have to wait for the BBC to ring you to say, oh, have a career in this. You can, in fact, there are kids on YouTube, and in fact, all the broadcasters are now scouting and scanning all of those channels all the time. How do we make sure that an artist who comes in through the cultural sector really understands the opportunities to have a voice and to be that kind of self-publishing? I think you worked on New Creatives with Rob, I think, on the marketing side. So yeah, if you want to talk a bit about that.
I think it's cross-sector thinking. I think it's sometimes the arts can feel like a bubble. So I want to work in the arts, I want to create artistic content, so I've got to work within the arts. But actually, the arts is the bedrock of most other creative forms of storytelling. It's advertising, it's film, it's audio. And I think that we're in a position where we should be looking at hybrid careers, where if you're a creative person who can use technology, you're useful to all sorts of different sectors. And I think art can be a slice of it. For some people, it'll be 100% of what they do. Some people, it might be 10%, but that 10% is brilliant, valid stuff that it contributes to culture in some way. So I think the idea of, and as you mentioned, that students and what they want to do, I think it's really about encouraging not just a single role that you're aiming for and training for. It's a palette of skills that you can then adapt over time. And you can say, well, I understand how real-time games engines works. That doesn't mean I have to be a games developer and work for a big studio. I could use those skills to work with a theatre or work with a dance company, and I can have a portfolio career. I don't think that's encouraged very much. I'm very lucky to be doing that kind of portfolio career, most people aren't told you can do it and don't have the opportunity to do it.
Which then brings me, Parminder, to you, because you're obviously, as an organisation, you're really focused on how do you give access to some of these platforms to communities to have a voice, to see themselves represented, to be able to represent themselves. What do you think? I mean, social media has been lots of opportunities. They've all come at a price. What do you think you would say the real drivers are for how you can work with those communities to make sure they're heard and given opportunities to tell stories?
I think for us, the emphasis on the process as well as the end result, whatever that might be, the sparkle at the end, the broadcast, the podcast, the show, the street festival, the process for us has equal weight. Building those relationships, what happens during those relationships, the aspect of well-being during making, curating, talking, exchanging, all of that is equally important for us. And I think that celebrating that success, as well as the number of views and clicks and likes and shares, etc., is valuable. And I think that that's really important to us as a team. But I think that people understand that because it's human. It's the human part of it. And I think when you have equal weight to the end result and the process, and what those two things ultimately spark together, and then the legacy, I think that builds, then starts to build the pictures of why you're doing what you're doing. So,
and confidence, building confidence that you have a right to be heard and that there's people will listen.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Can I come back to that? Actually, I think that's really crucial because I think somebody said earlier in one of the days that it's not about a shortage of skills, it's about a shortage of confidence. And I absolutely see that. I see a lot of people with bags of confidence. I see a lot of people with not, but with a lot of talent. And they won't put their head above the parapet and say, this is what we need to do. And so one of the most rewarding things we see students who come in who are really not sure what they want to do, who might have moved around a bit, and then by the end of their degree, they know how to put on an exhibition, they know how to exhibit or do professional representation to a panel. We do live briefs with students, and we want to work with people to do that so that we have collaboration, placements, things like that. So I think that confidence is key. And I think being the only university in the Black Country itself has got that glass ceiling. And it's one thing that's in my DNA to sort of sort out, in that it bothers me that students think media, games, anything else is something that other people do. So I really think it's something that they should be empowered to do. And that's what motivates me personally. But yeah.
And there's a question that's come through on the chat, which, in fact, from Rosie Townsend, so from somebody who we have worked with at the space before. Hi, Rosie. And her question, I'm going to throw this one to Hayley. Redistribution. I'd be interested to know the panel's thoughts on if they think the future of digital work made by theatre companies will be commissioned or picked up for distribution once it's been created. There we go. So the woman who had to do that for the RSC for quite some time, Hayley, what's your response?
And it's still a struggle now, and it's an ever-changing picture. And whereby there was one distribution model pre-pandemic, that completely changed during the pandemic, and now we're still understanding who's interested in this kind of work going forward. Where are those audiences, and who holds? It's really interesting what you're talking about routes to audiences. Who holds those routes to audiences, and what's the nature of the transaction with those audiences as well? How engaged are they? So I think it's really pertinent that you've asked that question right now, Rosie, because I'm wrestling with a couple of projects on exactly this. Are we trying to get them over the line, as a commission, or is it something that we're just going to jump straight in and make ourselves? And of course, jump straight in and make yourselves has a huge amount of risk attached to that. And also, if you're going down an acquisition route, you probably aren't going to get the costs covered. You're probably looking at a picture in which you have to try and find a number of partners to cover your costs. So that's a significant investment for a small organisation to be thinking about. And to speak to your point before, Parminder, about actually where is the value in the way in which it's received. if you're looking for numbers, then obviously the bigger distribution platforms such as the BBC or Sky Arts, hold some of those numbers. But if you're looking for genuine engagement or discussion or response to the pieces that you're presenting, if the nature of the piece is a provocation, then I would argue going after large numbers on a big platform distribution is pointless, because the only numbers you're going to get are about who might have checked on, who might have seen it for a few seconds, and actually that's of very, very little value. Whereas some of the other projects I've been involved with, particularly thinking about City of Culture, you could see the numbers were much, much smaller, but actually the value and the emotional shift in the audiences when they're presented with those pieces was of enormous value. And ultimately, if we're talking about, reflecting that back to the Arts Council or other people who might provide us with the funds to that, I think that actually thinking intelligently around what kind of audiences are we looking for, but then also what's the nature of the engagement we want with the audience, and then fitting that to purpose.
Something about at the moment with redistribution, you're kind of reselling the same product in a different format. Whereas actually, I think the world we're in is people are getting more used to creating themselves and working with. So, for example, like a dance piece might release the motion capture data of a show and say, create something out of what we have done on stage, and that's for a new audience. That might be a younger audience, a more tech-savvy audience. It's about reimagining stuff in new formats, I think, rather than try and take something that worked in one venue and then just filming it, putting it out. And I think that it will work for a certain slice of the audience, but it's thinking outside of that box. How could we put this into different contexts? Things like, Fortnite is a really good example where it's a mass open platform where you can now create experiences in. And so I've got a hope that, one day there will be ballet in Fortnite, which you can stumble across and find. It might not reach everyone. And yeah, the commercial model of that might be problematic, but there are different ways to slice that redistribution, I think, and that will become more prevalent.
Being innovative, I think, with the space we did a project with Derry Theatre in Minecraft. So it was the first live play ever in Minecraft, and I can always remember the hilarity of how could you create. We had to kind of be able to let figures sort of sit still, and anyway, the way that we wanted to have zombies in the landscape. It doesn't have zombies, didn't then anyway. But the easiest way to do it was you could dig a hole, you could drop a horse in a hole, because they do have horses in Minecraft, and it would move a little bit, but you could then put a mask of a zombie over the top, but it would sort of do this jiggling around thing. But brilliant. I mean, and of course then audiences love it, and the Twitter feeds that were sitting alongside the broadcast of that on YouTube were just extraordinary, kind of with young people just going, what have they done? How have they done that? Yeah, I think there's a lot. That's what we all are, imaginative, I think. And numbers, though, that's an interesting question. It kind of thought to me, because I think that's something we've kind of battled with a lot, is that numbers don't mean anything in and of themselves. That doesn't say that someone enjoyed it or was transformed by it or changed their opinions of stuff. Actually, what we need to know, we need to have more feedback from our audiences to say, was this something exceptional? So, I mean, in terms of projects you're working on, it's sort of, how do you take that approach? What do you regard success as looking like? Horrible expression, I know.
Well, we can't take it seriously until it's a long time after the actual activity, if that makes sense. I mean,
Absolutely.
Immediate evaluation is one form of immediate evaluation. You've got feedback, and people mostly say they had a great engagement with you and they've had a great time, or they might think about doing something different, which is lovely. It's lovely. The real impact, when we really feel like we've been successful, if people are still talking about the work years after, and the participants, the collaborators, the stories that have come through are still being talked about, and they're still very much alive. And they've not only reached people locally, regionally, but internationally on occasions. And I think that's the real sign of success for us. And we measure it through a number of ways, just people getting in touch and telling us how wonderful what they've been, how they've been, seen something and responded. but also just the fact that things keep getting picked up. A project that Harmeet also worked, on a different iteration of Desi Pubs, and that story has been picked up time and time again since we first started that project in 2015. And it still just has this power of, I love that story, and there's a bit more to uncover. So the narrative lives on, and the profile is built, and the people involved own it. So we don't really have anything to do with that story anymore. We're enjoying it as a spectator, which is brilliant, and I think that for us is success.
Yeah, so it is something, isn't it? It's being strategic, looking to the long view, a sustainable approach to it. There's a question from the online audience for Ian, but I think it's a really interesting one for all of you, from Siobhan Stevenson. So this is going back to the careers bit and careers development, bring portfolio careers, but it can be difficult to keep up skills, and some sectors don't recognise you are wary, don't know you, and they're kind of therefore wary to work with you. How do you mitigate that? And I think this is a part of that broader thing I think we've all been talking about, which is how are we supporting a largely freelance workforce to have continued career development? But Ian, thoughts on that? And I'd love to hear from Hayley.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of skills, I mean, we've recently done a big immersive VR project for the last 12 months, and so we've had apprentices on that program, and they have learned through the pipeline of how we develop that. So apprenticeships are something that I had 12 apprentices at the BBC. It was a really great program, but actually the bar to get in there was quite high, and so it's, I think, taking up those opportunities and not thinking I'm going to go in straight at a high level role. I don't want to do the bottom of the ladder. Actually, those bottom of the ladder people that started as apprentices have gone on to do really big things, and that's the thing that I think is overlooked. I think apprentices are maybe looked down on a little bit, and maybe people don't think that's the right route. So there's definitely that. The route that's been available for the last 20 years has been making your own work and putting it out there. That's also not available to most people. So like we had an example recently where an animator, 14 years old, making Lego versions of trailers. He's now just animated part of the new Spider-Man film in Lego, which is just because he put it on YouTube. That's an extraordinary one in a million, but he put himself out there. He showed his skills and was honest about the level that he's at. I think if you're presenting yourself as someone who's ready, no one's ready. People who are high-level producers still are like, I don't know how some of this stuff works. There is still lots to learn. I will not know all of it. So I think it's just being really focused on what you're really interested and passionate about, rather than trying to fit a box. Don't try and be everything to everyone.
And Hayley, in terms of, because it's something you and I have talked about around the skills bootcamp and kind of great opportunity, but then what? Then where? Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a difference between if you're looking for a technical role or if you're looking for a maker role. If you're looking for that technical role, then you need to be able to access the proper training in order to be able to have the hours either behind a desk or behind a camera or wherever your technical role might take you, to be able to become competent in that. And that's where courses are important, but also apprenticeships are important. Shadowing opportunities are important as well. I think that it becomes much more blurry when you're a maker and a collaborator and a producer and a director. And also there's a problem with terminology, because those things mean different things to different people. So one person's producer is another person's director. And I've come across this many times and fallen foul of it a few times myself as well. But I think underpinning that, there's a really important piece that people need to spend a bit of time unpicking their core creative skills. And by that, I don't mean being an amazing person who can draw or somebody who can compose, but what underpins all of that is your ability to question, to think about the questions of the world, to reflect, to connect as well. Those core creative skills will have value across many outputs. So actually, it's about what does that opportunity, how does that particular opportunity I'm interested in connect to my core creative skills, and owning those, being able to articulate those, understanding the value that you have and that you bring to a project. And I think then when you're in an opportunity where you're able to talk to people about potential projects, then you'll better be able to convince them to take a risk on you. Many times I've been the riskier option, and somehow have managed to bluff my way through. But it pays off in the end, and also being magnanimous about what you've learned along the way as well. And what you don't know, there's tons I don't know.
I'd just like to add as well is that we listen to associates, freelancers, and creative expertise in the area quite a lot, and often people don't consider themselves as creative expertise, but they definitely are. I think there's something in the shift of the role that culture plays now, and how you adapt yourself to that, or how you embrace it if you've already always aligned with it. So we've moved, obviously, pre-COVID and post-COVID. I think COVID sped it up a bit to a culture where definitely people are making, you mentioned, their own content. They're deciding. There's more of democracy in the decisions they make around culture. And I think that there's a slight dilemma at the moment where there are a lot of producers who want to make the work that they want to make because they believe in it, but their story might not resonate with space, with place, and I think there is a slight tension there, and we should be able to make room for a multitude of things, but actually the role in which funders are steering us around well-being, about caretaking, about how we contribute to civic society, I think they're all great shifts. They've always been there, but they're actually bigger now because of the climate we're living in. And I think there's probably a bit of not catching up, but probably a bit of sort of understanding how we articulate that in a way that doesn't compromise excellence, it doesn't compromise the craft, it doesn't compromise the quality of what you do, but you know how to talk about that well.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm afraid we are at time, but thank you all very much. Again, we could have carried on for a great deal longer, but thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. For our final session of the day, we're actually going to go back to the sofa to Parminder and Fiona to give us news of an exciting new funding opportunity. Over to you guys. Thank you.
Well, so welcome back. So we are very nearly at the end. These 3 days have gone past very fast. I can't believe we've got to the end. I'd like to say thank you to the team here at Wolverhampton and to Jamie for all his hard work. You've done a brilliant job. So thank you. But we do have one final little bit of news, which is that Parminder and I and the teams at the Space and Creative Black Country have been talking for some time about wanting to work together. We have worked on co-commissioned projects in the past, and so we have today announced that we do now have a formal partnership as part of the Space's new Arts Council funded programme as part of the national portfolio. So that means it lasts over 3 years, which is what is great because it will give us time and space to really explore ideas about what is going to work. At its most basic and simple, we are going to be running a commissioning programme for artists, storytellers, communities, community groups within the Black Country. And we want that to be as supportive and as simple and accessible and straightforward to access as possible. And there will be more information about that we will be putting onto our mutual websites in September. But Parminder, kind of coming to you, what are you hoping to get out of this collaboration?
I think it's to harness all of the appetite we've been experiencing over the years around, creating digital content in whichever form that might take, and looking at a really definite and committed opportunity for people to then express and create in a safe and also well supported space. So we have in the past, through some of the support through you and through some of the commissions that we run, piloted ideas around digital commissioning, but we've never had anything that's been robust enough to support some of the areas discussed today around capacity, around distribution, around innovating. So we're really looking forward to creating a commissioning opportunity with you around, that allows creatives to be able to do that over a longer period of time, not just sort of here, deliver this by next year, but this is in line with the way we work, which is, sort of pilot, test, and really draw out the strengths, and then you might change the model again. So it's something we're still working out ourselves, isn't it, Fee?
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're really welcoming a sort of a very place-based approach with this.
And I think one of the really exciting things, I think Hayley picked up on it, Ian did, that idea of something where we can provide support, mentoring, feedback, kind of, that sort of critical friend, any and all of those things, whatever's appropriate to the individuals or organizations that come to us. But also, I think being really mindful of having that ecology, really sponsoring that to say the best way for this to lock and load and stay and last and have that sustainability, as you said with Desi Pubs, brilliant project, and there it is, it flies on its own. It has a community of interest, people who want to continue to add to the story, and I think that's probably what we're also hoping to do, isn't to create that peer group ecology, whatever you want, so that people don't feel that they're on their own every time they want to tell a story.
Absolutely. And I think it's also looking at the next round as well. So we may hopefully will be able to identify through this process associates in the region who could then support the next iteration of this. So it's building that pipeline for the future. And we're very excited about it and looking forward to sort of working with yourselves to design what that looks like.
Absolutely. So it'll be, as I say, September. We'll make a further announcement about it. I think what we've decided, both teams, that it's better that we're going to offer some quite small research and development grants, so you can see it as a space to experiment and test. We're not expecting people to come to us with perfectly formed ideas. If there's just the germ of an idea or a thought about a way to engage communities with new stories or existing stories that don't get told very often, we want this first bit to be very iterative and to kind of let people experiment.
Absolutely. And I think, Fiona, we discussed that this isn't a sort of fund. So here you go, here's the exactly. A resource, and there you go, the financial resource anyway. This is very much a commission, which is a package almost of expertise, of some resource to kind of buy some expertise in, or to play with an idea and pay yourself to play with an idea, and also really look at the infrastructure. So it's a holistic approach, and that's something new for the region, and I think will be well welcomed with open arms. So yeah,
well, really
September.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much. And I think we're about to wrap up here. So it's time to say thanks again to everybody, definitely to our hosts here at Wolverhampton University at the Screen School, and to all of our incredible guests and panelists over the last 3 days, to all of our audiences. It's been amazing to have one here physically in the studio today, but to everyone online. And thank you for all of your questions. And obviously thanks to the Arts Council of England for supporting Digital Culture Talks. And so we're going to be going to have our lunch here. So sorry for those of you at home. Hopefully you have got something nice in the fridge. But yeah, it was great. And we'll see you at the next Digital Culture Talks. Thank you very much.